Buried treasure, hidden treasure, treasure you didn't know was there. It's a common theme throughout history. It's a famous movie from the 1940s called Gods the Lakers, starring Burl Ives. It's worth watching it. One member of his family throughout the movie is digging holes over the property, looking for the treasure of the pirate Lafayette, who had fought with Andy Jackson in the Battle of New Orleans. It's an interesting comedy of a movie. But Burl Ives keeps falling into the holes, and he doesn't think it's funny at all. It's worth looking at. I remember when I took my mother and father as they made out their estate, and they were listing everything, and I said, well, now's the time to reveal the great Gambala treasure. And my mother said, well, there's a jar of pennies in the cellar room. There was. Just pennies. Half of them Canadian. But this was not uncommon in Jesus' day, finding a buried treasure. After all, you're living in a society where all cash is hard. It's hard coin. There's no paper money. Therefore, it's heavy. And if you were wealthy enough to have a lot of that, you would have a place dug into the ground or into the wall of your house to hide it from thieves. Or if some army is marching on your country, you hide it deep, usually in a cellar wall or underneath, and you flee and you hope it's going to be there when you get back. And sometimes you get back and sometimes you don't get back. And then the centuries move on, the houses collapse, turns into agriculture, and somewhere down there under the ground is, a treasure from hundreds of years ago. It happens, it does. But the treasure, of course, Jesus is referring to is the kingdom of heaven as the treasure, the kingdom of heaven. So he is talking, of course, about the grace from God. That's what he's talking about, the grace of God. And where it is hidden, it's not in a field, it's in every one of us. It doesn't have to be hidden. But instead of time and the wind and water and dirt bearing the treasure on its own, we're the ones who buried the treasure in our lives. The treasure's been planted there because of our baptism. That treasure is received every time we receive the Eucharist. That treasure is received when we receive confirmation. That treasure is before us right now on the altar. But every time we do something we shouldn't do, watch something we shouldn't watch, say something we shouldn't say, well, that's like throwing dirt on the treasure and burying it within us. And sometimes people do it for a very long time and they even forget that that treasure is there. So we have to be reminded that when we do the work of God, when we say the kind things we're supposed to say, when we pray and we act properly, we follow God's commandments, that is the way of reaching out to that treasure and letting that treasure transform us. And we become part of that treasure. It's God taking over our lives. That's a beautiful thought. So in this Advent season, as we are celebrating the birth of the Son of God, the treasure that God put on this earth for all of us, for our salvation, and in these days going forward, reflect upon the things you say and reflect upon the things you do, and make sure everything you say and do is something that uncovers and brings forth the treasure of God that is within your life.